If he refuses to sign, we'll just send him to a nursing home. That's where he belongs anyway. My son said it like he was reading a grocery list. He was in my bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with his wife, Claire, shoes on the quilt my late wife stitched by hand. They didn't know I was in the hallway, halfway between the stairs and the door, looking at the sliver of light under that half-closed door and trying to decide whether 62 years of heart muscle could actually stop. Claire laughed first, sharp and light. He'll sign. Old men love to sign things if you call it help. You said that doctor is friendly, right? We get a note that he's… What was the word? Impaired. My son, Evan said. He tasted the word like candy. Temporary evaluation. It's enough to spook him. We slide the transfer in with the medical paperwork. He makes a shaky signature, and by the time he realizes, county records already show the deed is ours. The quilt rustled. Paper edges clicked. My name was in there somewhere. Black ink on lines I hadn't read. I set my palm on the wall to steady myself and felt the old house breathe. The studs, the ribs, the same 2x4s I lifted 40 years ago in a Cincinnati summer that left tar baked into my hands. I built this place from a hole and a blueprint, from overtime pay and stubbornness. From weekends my wife, Nora, brought lemonade to the site and told me the porch would be her favorite. I buried her out of this house. I taught Evan to ride a bike in the street out front, running behind him with a hand at his back. Worst case, Evan said, voice turning practical. We say he wandered off once. You know how they get. Safety becomes the priority. The home is for his own good. Judges love that line. I took one step backward, then another. The floor creaked near the hallway vent. A trader board I'd been meaning to fix, and the voices in my room hushed. I held still until I could hear the refrigerator cycle in the kitchen, the muted cars on our street, the tick-tick of the thermostat deciding we were 2 degrees too warm. When their whispers started again, I didn't wait to hear more. I moved down the stairs with care, through the living room with the lights off, past the mantel where Nora's picture sits between the flag from my brother's funeral and a spray of dried lavender that still smells like July if you bury your nose in it. In the kitchen, I washed a clean mug. It gave my hands a job while the thudding in my chest slowed to something I could use. Age teaches you decency, but it also teaches you discipline. Nothing shakes if you don't let it. I filled the mug with water and sat at the table where I pay bills on the 3rd Wednesday of each month and sort my mail into neat piles, utilities, insurance, junk that goes straight to the shredder. The shredder caught my eye. 2 days ago, the waste bin under it had been fuller than I remembered leaving it. Yesterday, the bottom drawer of the buffet was an inch open, though I always shut it flush. And last week when I got the mail, an envelope addressed to me had been slit open a fraction at the top, as if someone had tested a blade and changed their mind. You tell yourself little things are nothing until they aren't. I didn't go back upstairs. I waited them out. When they finally came down, they had the faces people wear when they've decided something for you and think you'll thank them later. Claire asked if I wanted tea. Evan kissed my head without meeting my eyes. I told them I was going for my evening walk, then slipped my keys from the hook by the door and stepped into the cool that comes after rain. I didn't walk far. 2 blocks to the corner, then 3 more to the park where a city worker had forgotten to turn off the sprinkler and water stitched silver lines into the grass. I sat on the bench under the birch, the one with the carved initials I pretend not to notice, and let the worst of it become a shape I could hold. Rage burns quick. Cold cuts cleaner. I thought about the paper they wanted me to sign. I thought about the doctor they were counting on. I thought about power of attorney, guardianship, and the way bureaucracy can be a crowbar in the wrong hands. I thought, too, about the friends I'd kept. A lawyer Nora liked because she was plain-spoken and not impressed by men who raised their voices. A neighbor who used to be a detective and now gardens tomatoes like they owe him money. The bank manager who sends me Christmas cards with his kids in matching sweaters. By the time porch lights clicked on up and down the block, I had my breath back. By the time I turned toward home, I had something better. I wouldn't confront them. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. I would make lists. I would move what mattered. I would let them carry their plan to my doorstep, the way a thief carries a flashlight straight to his own reflection. When the trap closed, I wanted them to feel it snap. Breakfast the next morning was quiet. Too quiet. Claire moved around the kitchen like she'd been rehearsing. Coffee steaming, plates warm. Her voice pitched too sweet as she asked if I'd slept well. Evan kept his head down, scrolling his phone, pretending interest in the stock market, though I knew he hadn't invested a dime in years. I was thinking, Claire said, setting a plate in front of me. You should let us handle some of the bills. It must be tiring, keeping track of all that paperwork at your age. At your age. She slid the plate closer, as if scrambled eggs could soften the words. I'm fine, I said evenly. Been paying my own bills for 40 years. Another month won't kill me. Her smile stiffened, but she didn't push. Evan glanced up then, gave her a look, then went back to pretending his phone mattered more. That was confirmation enough. After they left for errands, I walked through my own house the way a stranger might, taking in what had shifted. My study door was unlocked, though I always turned the key twice. A drawer in my desk sat flush, but the dust along its edge had been disturbed, like fingers had trailed it open and shut. My filing cabinet still had its padlock, but the hasp showed scratches fresh enough to shine under the morning light. None of it surprised me. What surprised me was how calm I felt cataloging it all, like an inspector writing down violations. When you know someone wants to betray you, every little detail becomes evidence, not outrage. By noon, I had already made 2 calls. First to Deborah, my lawyer of 15 years, the one Nora trusted when the cancer treatments drained our savings and we had to renegotiate the mortgage. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. Review my will, tighten power of attorney, add a safeguard clause. She didn't ask questions. Deborah never did unless she smelled blood. The second call was shorter. Charlie, my neighbor, retired detective, part-time gardener, full-time skeptic. Keep your eyes open, I told him. Might be some unusual traffic around my place. You expecting trouble? He asked. I'm expecting company, I said, and left it at that. That afternoon I sat in my armchair by the window, book open but unread, while Evan and Claire came home with shopping bags. Designer logos. Too many for 2 people with no steady income. Claire carried a new folder tucked under her arm like it was fragile. They went straight upstairs without a word to me. Later, after dinner, I went to refill my water and found that same folder on the counter. Careless. Or confident. Maybe both. I didn't touch it, not yet. Just noted the initials typed on the tab. P.O.A. Power of attorney. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I rinsed my glass, put it back on the shelf and went to bed early. But I didn't sleep. I waited. At 11:45, footsteps creaked in the hallway. Evan, by the rhythm. He paused outside my door, long enough that I slowed my breathing. Then the handle turned gentle, as if he thought I'd already taken a pill and was dead to the world. He didn't come in, not fully, just opened the door enough to look. The air shifted with his shadow. Then he closed it again. Minutes later, I heard the soft metallic rattle of the filing cabinet in my study. Claire's voice whispered low, too muffled to catch the words. Papers shuffled. Then a sharp curse under his breath. They were looking for the key. The one taped under the drawer for 30 years. I lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, counting heartbeats until the house settled again. By morning, everything looked normal. The folder was gone from the counter. Claire hummed while making toast. Evan asked about the neighbor's new car like small talk could patch the crack. But I wasn't listening to what they said. I was listening to what they didn't. The silence around certain words. The way Claire avoided my eyes when she mentioned helping with paperwork. The way Evan's hand hovered just a second too long near my keys by the door before he pulled back. They thought they were circling me quietly. They thought age dulled my ears, my memory, my instincts. But I had heard every whisper, seen every glance, felt every shift in my house. And now I knew for certain. They weren't planning to wait until I was gone. They were planning to erase me while I was still alive. The first rule is simple. Don't show your hand until the trap is ready. Confrontation is noise, and noise warns the enemy. Silence keeps them guessing. So I stayed silent. I let Evan and Claire believe I was drifting, distracted, slipping into the fog they wanted to hang over me. I let them think I was the old man who forgot where he left his glasses. Meanwhile, I started moving the pieces they couldn't see. I called Mark, an old friend from my army days. We hadn't spoken in months, but some favors never expire. I need a set of eyes, I told him. He didn't hesitate. You in trouble? Not yet, I said. But I might be if I don't prepare. By evening, he was at my door with a nondescript brown bag. Inside were 2 pinhole cameras no bigger than shirt buttons, a portable scanner that fit in a drawer, and a thumb drive with encryption I didn't need explained. We installed the cameras together. One in my study, tucked behind a line of books on the shelf, angled at the desk where I keep my files. The other in the hallway, disguised in the vent cover across from the safe. Clean, discreet, no wires to betray them. When he left, he clapped my shoulder. You always said chess was your game. Play it like chess. That night, I shifted the contents of the safe. Out went the deed, the insurance, Nora's jewelry, the bonds. I carried them to the bank the next morning and rented a new box under a number only Deborah knew. In their place, I left something else. Decoys. Stacks of outdated statements, official-looking but worthless. A document with legal jargon that meant nothing. A sealed envelope with Claire's name written across it in my handwriting, though inside was only a blank sheet of paper. And on top, an unloaded revolver. Beside it, a yellow sticky note. I see you. I taped the spare key back under the drawer, crooked just enough to look like it had been hidden poorly. Then I went about my day as if nothing had changed. The following afternoon, Evan tried again. I was in the garage, pretending to sort through old tools, when I heard him upstairs. The floor creaked in the hall, then paused near my study. 10 minutes later, the safe door groaned faintly through the wall. I didn't interrupt. I wanted him to believe the theft had gone unnoticed. When he finally came down, he looked different. Tense, wired. He grabbed a beer from the fridge without asking, chugged half of it, and muttered something about checking emails. He didn't look at me once. That was good. That meant he'd found the note. Claire, on the other hand, acted like a cat with cream. Smiling too wide, hovering too close, telling me she'd already started looking at more practical apartments for me. Something smaller, 1 floor, close to a clinic. You'd be more comfortable, she said. I nodded politely. I'll think about it. Inside, I noted every word. The cameras caught the rest. That night, reviewing the footage on Mark's thumb drive, I watched Evan rifling through my desk drawers, hands shaking as he lifted files, scanned pages, shoved them back crooked. I watched Claire kneel at the safe, stroke the dial with her fingers like she could charm it open. I watched them whisper, argue, kiss, plot. All in the house I built, under the roof that had protected them both for free. I saved every frame, labeled them by time, logged each incident. Evidence doesn't lie. The next morning, I acted tired, distracted. Let them believe their games were working. I forgot my reading glasses in the kitchen. I misplaced my wallet in the living room. Claire offered to help me balance my checkbook. Evan asked if I'd considered writing things down in case something happened to me. Yes, I said, sipping coffee. I've been thinking about that a lot. They smiled. They thought it meant progress. But what it really meant was that the board was set. And soon it would be my move. It didn't take long for them to push. Parasites never wait. They feed as soon as they think the host is weak. On the 5th day, Evan came into the living room carrying a folder. His smile was wide, but his eyes darted, the way they used to when he lied about cutting class in high school. Dad, he began, settling into the chair across from me like it was casual. Claire and I have been talking. We think it'd be smart to make things easier for you. With the house, the accounts, the paperwork. He slid the folder across the table. It's just a simple agreement. Joint authorization. That way, if something happens, nothing gets stuck in probate. All neat and tidy. I kept my face neutral, nodding as though I were grateful. I didn't open the folder right away. I let the weight of the silence work on him. Claire stood in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to look calm but tapping her nails against her elbow. Finally, I flipped it open. The pages were clean, professional, full of dense legal jargon meant to discourage careful reading. But my eyes still worked fine. The language gave them full access to my accounts and the deed, disguised as streamlining management. My signature was the last key they needed. I closed it softly. "You know," I said, "I should get my reading glasses. My eyes aren't what they used to be." Evan chuckled too quickly. Of course. Take your time. It's all standard stuff." I rose, folder in hand. "I'll look it over tonight. Give you an answer tomorrow." He tried to hide his relief, but his jaw unclenched a fraction. Claire smiled thinly. "We just want to help, James." "I know," I said, and I walked to my study, shutting the door behind me. Inside, I scanned every page with Mark's device, saved them to the encrypted drive labeled and secure. Then I called Deborah. "I need a duplicate," I told her. "Altered. Adjusted," I said. By evening, she'd sent me back a new version. Identical in format, margins, fonts, except for one buried clause. The account would require my sole authorization for any withdrawals. Any evidence of coercion would trigger full reversion to my control. Legally airtight, dressed in camouflage. The next day, I played my part. I sat at the table with the folder in front of me, sighing as though I'd wrestled with the decision. Evan leaned forward, eager. Claire kept her smile plastered on, too bright for the room. "Well," I said at last, "I suppose it makes sense. Less hassle for everyone." I handed them the altered document, watched them skim the first page, then sign without reading further. Evan's pen scratched too fast, desperate. Claire signed with a flourish, like victory was already hers. I added my signature last, slow and steady. Then I slid the folder shut. They left the room grinning, whispering to each other, already celebrating. I heard Claire say, "Finally," as they climbed the stairs. I stayed seated at the table, my pen still warm in my hand. They thought the con was complete. But what they had signed was not a key, it was a cage. The strange thing about people who think they've won is that they get sloppy. Victory makes them loud, careless, almost proud of their deceit. I saw it the very next morning. Claire hummed while pouring coffee, her steps light, her smile stretched so tight it looked painful. Evan kissed her on the cheek in front of me, something he hadn't done in years, like they were suddenly free of secrets. Over breakfast, he mentioned a friend in real estate who could help with listings if the market looked good. He said it casually, as though testing me, eyes flicking to mine for a reaction. I buttered my toast in silence, nodded once, and asked if the trash had been taken out. He frowned, unsure if I had heard him. That uncertainty was the first crack in his confidence. Later, when they left the house, I went into their room. I hadn't stepped inside since they moved in. Claire's perfume hung heavy, artificial roses trying to mask the stale undertone of greed. On the dresser sat a new leather folder. Inside, property brochures, mortgage calculators, even scribbled notes estimating how much Dad's place could sell for. They weren't just dreaming. They were planning to strip my house bare and trade it like a car at auction. I didn't get angry. Anger is a waste of energy. Instead, I copied every note, every page, slid them back exactly where I'd found them, and left as silently as I'd entered. That evening, I sat at my desk reviewing the footage from the hidden cameras. At 1:13 p.m., Evan had entered my study, opened my filing cabinet, and photographed the decoy documents with his phone. At 1:19, Claire joined him, whispering, "It's almost ours." At 1:22, they kissed over my safe like it was an altar. I labeled the file, Exhibit A. Over the next 3 days, I gathered more. Recordings of whispered conversations, photographs of their notes, logs of their movements. I compiled everything neatly into folders on Deborah's drive. She called me on the 4th night. "You sure you want to go through with this?" she asked. "I'm sure," I said. "They think I'm the fool. Let's make sure the law proves otherwise." Meanwhile, I let them believe their charade was working. Claire began mentioning retirement homes over dinner. She left glossy brochures by my chair, circled phrases like assisted living and safe, supportive environment. Evan dropped hints about downscaling for simplicity. They spoke as though my life were a burden, my independence a mistake, my memories an inconvenience. One evening, I caught Claire standing in the hallway outside my room. She held a pill bottle in her hand, one of mine, though I never leave them out. She smiled when she noticed me watching. Too wide, too sudden. Just organizing things for you, she said, slipping it into her pocket. I didn't respond, but I noted the time. 10:42 p.m. Camera 2 had caught the whole thing. By now, the pattern was clear. They were circling closer each day, emboldened by the signature they thought gave them control. But they hadn't realized the papers bound them tighter than any rope. They hadn't realized their every step was being recorded. On the 6th day, Evan came into the living room, his chest puffed up like a boy who'd finally grown taller than his father. He leaned against the mantel, looking down at me as though the balance had shifted. "Dad," he said, "Claire and I have been talking. You should consider moving sooner. This place, it's too much for you. We can handle it. You'd be better off somewhere with help." I sipped my coffee. Somewhere like a nursing home? The words froze him. His mouth opened, shut, then twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's just safer. Easier for everyone." I nodded once. "I'll think about it." Inside, my decision was already made. They thought they were close to victory, but they were standing on a trapdoor, and I was the one holding the lever. By the end of the week, the pressure wasn't subtle anymore. They'd grown bold, too bold, mistaking my silence for surrender. Saturday morning, Claire announced that she'd scheduled a doctor's appointment for me. "Just a routine checkup," she said, sliding the note across the table with the time written in her tidy cursive. Her voice was syrupy, but her eyes were sharp, watching my reaction. Evan added, "Yeah, Dad, it's good to get everything on record. The clinic can do a capacity evaluation, make sure you're, still sharp." Still sharp. The phrase hung between us like a noose. I folded the note once, twice, then tucked it into my shirt pocket. "Good idea," I said calmly. "Wouldn't hurt." Their relief was visible, almost pathetic. Evan leaned back, smiling in triumph. Claire kissed his cheek as if the game was already won. But I had already called Deborah the night before. She knew about the appointment. She knew about the likely questions, the signatures they hoped to wring from me. And she had already spoken to the doctor, a professional who valued his license more than petty schemes. The evaluation would be performed, but on my terms, not theirs. When the day came, Claire insisted on driving. Evan sat in the passenger seat, talking loudly about future planning, as if rehearsing lines for an audience. I sat in the back, quiet, watching the landscape roll past the window. At the clinic, the doctor greeted me warmly, shook my hand firmly, and asked Evan and Claire to wait outside. Their faces twitched, unprepared for exclusion. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. "Mr. Callahan," the doctor said, "your attorney briefed me. You're aware of what your family's asking." "Yes," I said. "Do you feel coerced?" "No," I replied evenly. "I feel disappointed." He nodded slowly, then began the standard evaluation. Memory, reasoning, orientation. Child's play for a man who still did his own taxes and fixed his own plumbing. When he asked me to recall 3 words after 5 minutes, I gave him 5 more for good measure. By the end, he smiled faintly. "You're sharper than half the staff I work with. Put it in writing," I told him. He did. Outside, Evan jumped up like a nervous dog. "Well, how did it go?" The doctor's voice was dry. "Your father is in excellent cognitive health. He'll be managing his own affairs for a long time." Claire's smile cracked. Evan stammered, then forced a grin. That's great, Dad. Great news." I said nothing. Silence was heavier than gloating. Back home, they tried to recover. Claire cooked an elaborate dinner, seasoning it with false cheer. Evan opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving. They clinked glasses, overcompensating, pretending the appointment hadn't backfired. But their eyes betrayed them. Panic flickered behind the performance. Later that night, I checked the footage from camera 1. At 12:17 a.m., Evan was in my study again, phone light glowing as he rifled through drawers. He found the altered document, the one he thought was his prize, and photographed every page. At 12:23, Claire joined him. "It's fine," she whispered. He signed. "That's all that matters." I watched them kiss, clutch the folder, whisper about how soon they could take over. And I labeled the file, Exhibit B. The net was tightening. They didn't realize every desperate move they made was another knot in the rope around their own necks. I sat at my desk long after they'd gone upstairs, reviewing the growing archive of their greed. Each clip, each document, each careless word, it was all aligning into a single, inevitable conclusion. They thought the doctor's appointment was their chance to prove me unfit. But it had proved something else entirely. It had proved just how unfit they were to inherit anything. By Monday, the masks were slipping. The smiles didn't last as long. The patience wore thin. I could see it in Claire first. The tapping nails, the way she started snapping at small things, the way her eyes lingered on my study door like she could will it open. That evening, Evan finally showed his teeth. We sat in the living room, the television humming nonsense neither of us watched. He muted it, turned toward me, and leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "Dad," he said, voice low, "this house is too much for you. You know it. The upkeep, the bills. It's irresponsible to keep going like this." "I've managed for 40 years," I replied evenly. "You won't for 40 more." His mouth twisted, trying to look sympathetic but landing somewhere closer to a sneer. "You need to start thinking about what happens next. About where you belong." Claire came in then, sliding onto the arm of his chair. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her nails bright against his shirt. "We've already looked into a few places. Really nice ones. Safe, comfortable. You'd have people around you all the time. Nurses, meals, activities. No more strain." "Sounds like a vacation," I said dryly. Her smile sharpened. "In a way, yes." Evan leaned closer. "Look, Dad, we're trying to help. You sign the final transfer, and it'll be easier for everyone. You'll thank us later." I set my coffee cup down carefully, aligning it with the coaster. "And if I don't sign?" His jaw flexed. For a second, the pretense cracked. "Then we'll have to figure out other options. You don't want it to get ugly." The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I let the words hang there, heavy and poisonous. Then I nodded once. "I understand." They thought my agreement meant compliance. They didn't realize it meant something else entirely. That night, I set the stage. I called Deborah again, asked her to be ready. I sent her copies of every recording, every document, every log. Then I called Charlie. "Wednesday night," I told him. "I'll need you here. Bring your old badge, the one that still makes people nervous." "You finally pulling the trigger?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Time to close the jaws." On Tuesday, I planted the bait. I left an envelope on my desk, half visible under a stack of mail. Across the front, in my handwriting, I wrote, "Property transfer, final copy." Inside was the altered contract, identical to the one they'd already signed, with an extra page that spelled out every safeguard in bold print. That night, camera 1 caught them finding it. Evan's hand trembled as he pulled it free. Claire grinned wide enough to split her face. They whispered frantically, thinking they'd stumbled onto the last piece of their puzzle. "This is it," Evan muttered. "Once we have this, it's done." Claire kissed him. "Tomorrow we push him. He won't refuse twice." I watched them on the screen, their greed burning hot and stupid, their confidence swelling like a balloon ready to pop. Wednesday came. I cooked dinner myself, roast chicken, potatoes, Nora's old recipe. Evan and Claire ate quickly, barely tasting. Their minds weren't on the food. They were on the envelope waiting in my study. When the plates were cleared, Evan finally spoke. "Dad, about the papers." His voice was taut, impatient. I set my fork down. Yes, let's talk about them. Claire leaned forward, eyes bright. So you'll sign tonight? I smiled, slow and calm. Yes, tonight. They didn't hear the second part. Unspoken but steady in my mind. And when I do, it will be the last move you ever make in this house. The air felt heavy that night, like the house itself was holding its breath. Evan paced the living room, folder in his hands, papers rustling like restless birds. Claire perched on the edge of the couch, her smile too sharp, her eyes locked on me as though willing me to falter. Dad, Evan said finally, let's just get this done. No more delays. He placed the folder on the coffee table, tapping it with 2 fingers. Sign and we can all move forward. Claire added softly, it's best for everyone. I sat back in my chair, calm, letting the silence stretch until Evan shifted uncomfortably. Then I leaned forward, pulled the folder toward me, and opened it. The contract looked pristine because it was Deborah's work, flawless and binding. My name already filled the line where they thought power would transfer. Here? I asked, pointing at the signature line. Yes, Evan said quickly, almost too quickly. Just there. I picked up the pen, let it hover, then pressed it slowly to the paper. The scratching of ink was loud in the quiet room. Evan exhaled. Claire clasped her hands together like a woman in church. When I was finished, I set the pen down, closed the folder, and slid it back to him. There, I said simply. He opened it, scanned the top page, and grinned. Claire leaned over his shoulder, nodding in satisfaction. They thought they'd won. That was the moment Charlie walked in. He'd let himself through the side door, badge still gleaming enough to command attention. Behind him came Deborah, her briefcase tucked neatly under her arm. Evening, Charlie said casually. Hope I'm not interrupting. Evan shot to his feet, eyes wide. What the hell is this? Deborah stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. This is a legal witness to your father's signature, and an attorney of record, present to ensure no coercion has taken place. She set her briefcase on the table, snapping it open with practiced precision. Shall we review the terms? Claire's smile cracked. Terms? What do you mean? He signed. Yes, Deborah interrupted smoothly. He signed a document affirming that all assets remain under his sole control. Any attempt to use this contract for unauthorized purposes constitutes fraud. And considering the hidden cameras we've reviewed, she tapped her folder. Fraud is the least of your concerns. Evan's face drained of color. Cameras? Charlie chuckled. You should have smiled more for them. We've got hours of footage. You two whispering about nursing homes, about forcing signatures, about selling this place out from under him. He leaned closer, voice dropping. You ever hear what conspiracy to defraud a senior gets you? Judges don't like that one. Claire's voice trembled. You can't. This isn't. Deborah cut her off. It's airtight. Every word, every page, every recording. If you push this any further, the only house you'll be living in is state property. Evan slammed the folder shut, hands shaking. You set us up. I finally spoke, my voice low, steady. No, you set yourselves up. I just let you keep walking. The room was still. Claire clutched Evan's arm, whispering furiously. His eyes darted from me to Charlie to Deborah, searching for an escape. There wasn't one. At last, he shoved the folder back across the table, his face twisted with rage. Fine, he spat. Keep your damn house. Charlie raised an eyebrow. That's the smartest thing you've said all week. They stormed upstairs, the sound of drawers opening and slamming carrying through the ceiling. I didn't move. I just sat in my chair, steady as stone, while Deborah packed her briefcase and Charlie poured himself a glass of water. The trap had snapped shut, but punishment was still waiting. I expected them to leave that night. Pride wounded, plan shattered. They should have packed their bags and disappeared into the dark. But greed doesn't release its grip so easily. Near midnight, footsteps creaked above me. I muted the television and waited. A drawer slammed, A suitcase zipper rasped open. Then Claire's voice, harsh and sharp. "We can still fix this. He's old. He can't fight forever." Evan's reply was muffled, but the words carried, "We've come too far. We'll take what's left and go. He won't stop us." I rose quietly, crossed to my study, and switched on the monitor linked to camera 1. The screen flickered with their movements upstairs. Evan was shoving clothes into a bag. Claire rifled through my dresser drawers, my dresser, in my bedroom, pulling out envelopes, searching for cash, valuables, anything they could carry. At 12:43, the safe door groaned. They'd found the key again. Evan's hands trembled as he swung it open. The camera caught his face clearly when he froze at the sight. The revolver, still resting atop the decoy files, and the yellow note. "I see you." Claire hissed, "Just take it." She grabbed the envelopes, rifled through the papers, then cursed when she realized they were useless. Evan slammed the door shut, sweat beading on his forehead. That was when Charlie stepped into the hall, flashlight beam cutting across their startled faces. He didn't say a word, just let the badge hang in the light, let the silence press down heavy. Evan stammered. Claire sputtered. Both of them cornered like rats. I came up behind him, steady, unhurried. "Leaving so soon?" Evan turned, pale and shaking. "Dad, we were—" "This isn't what it looks like. It looks—" I interrupted. "Like theft. And after tonight, it looks like intent. Do you know what intent means in court, son?" He swallowed hard, eyes darting to Claire. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Charlie stepped forward. "We can call this in right now. Probable cause is more than enough. Or," he glanced at me, "you want to handle it your way?" I nodded slowly. "My way." Deborah had prepared the paperwork. Guardianship not for me, but against them, restraining orders, legal notices, all signed and ready. I pulled the folder from under my arm, placed it on the bed beside their half-packed suitcase. "You'll leave tonight," I said. "Not with my money, not with my house, not with a shred of what you thought you'd steal. You'll leave with nothing." Evan's voice cracked. "Dad, please. You called me old. You called me weak. You plotted to lock me away while you sold the walls I built with my hands. You laughed about it. Every second of it is recorded. If you so much as touch a brick of this house again, the police will have everything. Do you understand me?" Claire's face twisted with rage, but she didn't speak. Evan nodded slowly, shoulders sagging like a boy caught stealing candy. "Good," I said. "Now get out." Charlie watched as they stuffed their bags, shoving clothes and toiletries without care. They stumbled down the stairs, out the front door, into the night. The sound of their car fading down the street was the sweetest silence I'd heard in years. I stood in the doorway long after the taillights vanished, the cool night air brushing against my face. Charlie clapped my shoulder once, solid and steady. "They won't be back," he said. "No," I replied. "Not after this." Inside, the house was quiet again. My house, my walls, my rules. The punishment wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was simple, final, absolute exile. They had wanted me gone. Instead, they were the ones cast out. The morning after was still. No footsteps overhead. No murmured whispers through thin walls. No scent of Claire's perfume clawing the air. Just silence, clean and unbroken. I made my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and let the steam curl against my face. Across from me, the chair Evan used to occupy sat empty, a hollow reminder of how far a sun can fall. At 9 o'clock sharp, Deborah arrived. She carried her briefcase, set it on the table, and opened it with practiced precision. Inside were the documents, restraining orders, asset protections, bank notifications, every safeguard sealed and ready. "You want to press charges?" she asked evenly. I thought about it. About police cars in the driveway, about Evan's name in court records, about Claire's shrill protests echoing through hearings, about the humiliation, the gossip, the stain it would leave. Then I shook my head. "No, not unless they come back." "Fair," she said, sliding the folder toward me. But with what we've gathered, you hold every card. If they try anything again, it's over before it starts. I signed where she pointed. Each stroke of the pen was steady, deliberate, final. When she left, I locked the folder in the cabinet, turned the key twice, and pocketed it. Charlie stopped by around noon. He didn't knock, just walked in like he always had, carrying a bag of tomatoes from his garden. He set them on the counter and leaned against it, arms folded. "They gone?" he asked. "Gone," I confirmed. He nodded once. "Good. You don't deserve that kind of poison under your roof." We didn't talk about it further. Some things don't need words. That evening, I walked the house slowly, room by room. My study was untouched, the safe closed, the cameras still quietly blinking their invisible red. The living room was calm, the mantel still holding Nora's photo, steady as ever. Upstairs, the rooms Evan and Claire had filled with their noise were stripped bare, only dust and silence left behind. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, the quilt beneath me. I thought of the night I'd overheard Evan's voice, cold, casual, dismissing me as though I were already gone. "If he refuses to sign, we'll just send him to a nursing home." I traced the stitches of the quilt with my fingers. Nora's hands had sewn them. Steady hands, patient hands, hands that never once turned against me. For a long time, I stayed there, listening to the quiet house breathe. Then I stood, closed the door behind me, and left the rooms to their silence. The punishment was done, and so was my family.